right, TJ Cook here with ABQID powered by CNN Ingenuity. A couple of our Activate New Mexico entrepreneurs on our call too, so they can ask a bunch of good questions as I'm going through essentially what is the cornucopia of options or resources specific to cold hard cash that a startup might need during the COVID crisis. I'm going to run through the spreadsheet I've created. This is a quick and dirty spreadsheet. I was astute enough to go in and use the alternating alternating colors on the rows of the spreadsheet to make it a little easier to read. Other than that, something I've just put together very rapidly, try to get some of my frustration taken care of, which is that there's a bunch of sites popping up, pages popping up, but no one place to kind of let me know exactly what each instrument is and how I access it, things like that. So here we go. There are three categories of stuff, of response that have been put together. The most well-known one is covered by these first three, and that is coming from the CARES Act, the $2.2 trillion stimulus package, of which I think it's like 350 billion is kind of going to these three instruments, and I'll explain those. Locally, we do have a couple helpful things, maybe not helpful for software startups because one is a loan guarantee program, and the other is zero interest loans for land building infrastructure. But nevertheless, for certain companies, it will be beneficial. And then this is where there's going to be more added soon as I get more information. There is a SIC $100 million loan that's for medium-sized businesses. I'm really focused on startups here. Just starting out, I think the city of Albuquerque gets it right in that sense that this is a micro business. I'm really talking to micro businesses here. You've just started. You're in some ways at most risk because you just started, don't have any collateral, don't have any trailing revenue, things like that. But these are the two that I've popped in just as exemplary. There are many other programs popping up that I'm seeing every day, and they'll be added. But that's at the local level. Actually, the Facebook thing isn't a local level, but it's accessible to a local level. All right, the biggies, let's go through these real quick. So in your economic stimulus from Uncle Sam, you've got the Payment Protection Program and Economic Injury Disaster Loans. You're going to hear a lot about this PPP and EIDL. This one is getting the most attention, your Payment Protection Program. Why? Because you can get up to 8 weeks of payroll covered by Uncle Sam. And when I say covered, I mean that this is a loan, but it is a forgivable loan, i.e. if you take that loan and use it to paying payroll, your loan will be forgiven either in full or in part. In full, if you keep every FTE that you applied for the loan on, in part, if you do end up letting some of that payroll go or shrinking your payroll, which, you know, let's be honest, might be the case for many businesses. For this audience, for true micro businesses, yes, it can cover your own, I'm going to fix a typo, your own salary as well as a founder. Some of our sole proprietorships or one-person startups can be covered. However, if you have no payroll, you have no record of payroll over the past 6 months and things like that, it will actually be hard to utilize the PPP. Companies like AdWallet, companies like Electric Playhouse, which have had a round of funding and do have staff and have had staff for months, this is mostly for them, right? Because they can tell Uncle Sam, look, here's the past 6 months of payroll, and therefore what I base, and even the prior year's payroll, the same month last year, is actually what they like to use to get that, what they should be able to recompense for. So you have to have payroll history, which is unfortunate. So like Zach, you couldn't use this to pay for a full-time marketing person that you don't yet have on staff. It would be really tough to make that happen. So that's the payment protection program. I'll gloss over that for now. This one is the one that might be more appropriate. Although again, it is a loan and it's very deferrable, very friendly terms as a loan, but it is still a loan and is not forgivable in that sense. Both of these you get through an SBA approved lender. And these, I believe, there's already SBA approved lenders. There's also lenders that will be specifically approved just for this loan, and they're going to be creating that list shortly. But eligibility requirements are not hard for a super early stage company, less than 500 employees. And yes, sole proprietorships do count. If you're not even an LLC yet, you can still apply for these things. This one is really for expenses that could have been met. So this is a gotcha. They could have been met had the disaster not occurred, including payroll and other operating expenses. So it can work in tandem with your PPP loan, but now are not able to be met because of that. So this is where you get creative and say, I would have had this many new customers and therefore covered these types of expenses, but now I can't. If we look at the loan application, et cetera, you can see it's pretty vanilla. It's going to ask for a bunch of stuff. There's about 4 screens of information and a summary screen. It's going to feel a little bit turbo-taxi. You got to have all your ducks in a row, your EIN, et cetera. And you have to make all these assurances like, yes, I'm eligible. But there's really 3 pages of information you provide. I didn't run through all these screens yet, but I've heard that it's pretty standard and pretty simple. So those are the Uncle Sam ones. Now, what is pretty darn cool about this one is that, let's say you apply for an EIDL, Economic Injury Disaster Loan. You can then apply for an Emergency Economic Injury Grant. And what this does is that Uncle Sam, in his infinite wisdom, understands that sometimes getting the loan docs and everything figured out and getting you your first cash will take some time. What this is put $10,000 of the total amount of your loan into your pocket within 3 days of getting the loan, if that makes sense. So actually potentially 3 days of applying, and that is forgivable. Actually, it looks like I messed these up. Told you I wasn't quite ready for. There we go. That's important. So that is a really cool feature of this. It gives you cash within 3 days you can use to pay, and that's really something admirable about our federal government, is that they are acting quickly on this. This is here now, and it's pretty much live. I think PPP actually is going to be starting Friday, if I'm not mistaken, but so it's good to know it right now so you can be kind of first in line. I believe it's probably going to be first come, first serve. So it's kind of like when it launches, we want to be there, and yes, it'll probably crash and be very messy, but let's not be late to the game. Any questions on the federal side? And I'll try to answer right away if I can. Otherwise, I've provided links in the spreadsheet to where you get the deeper dives. All right, so at the state level here in New Mexico, there's 2 vehicles that have been introduced, 2 main vehicles. There's some other things going on like loan deferral if you have an existing loan. I know not many of our very early stage companies do because they're very early stage and can't get loans, but these are the 2 I'll highlight for this spreadsheet in terms of startups that I know looking for cash. So this guy, the New Mexico Economic Development Department Business Loan Guarantee Program, is basically the state stepping in and saying, look, we have a lot of companies who aren't going to be able to qualify for a loan because the banks are going to look at them and say, with COVID, I'm not going to do anything, right? So unless somebody can step in and guarantee this thing, I'm not going to loan this small startup any money. So the state steps in and says, with some of the funding that they have, we will be the guarantor of the loan that you make to this startup, up to 80% of the principal or $50,000, whichever is less. So that means, you know, $50,000 could represent 80% of a loan. So these are not huge loans, but can float you for what we all hope is the duration of COVID, the next 3 to 6 months, hot and heavy. They're highly probable there's going to be some disruption again in the fall, but right now is the most pain we all think we're going to be experiencing from this. So what's cool about this is that if you have a bank right now, and especially if that bank is on the list for participating with the state on this level, you just will apply for a loan from your bank, like you maybe have already considered. But instead, you're going to have this buddy next to you with some pocketbooks and some money in his pocket saying, yeah, I'll vouch for this entrepreneur, you know, up to 80% of the principal or $50,000. And that bank will say, okay, well, it makes it a lot less risky, so here you go. So this is available at the gonm.biz website. Federal assistance is mentioned here, but I'm going to scroll down to these two programs where you find out tons more info here. Again, still not the best for a business without any collateralizable assets, things like that. However, the best bet yet for getting a loan, now that you have a guarantor who could step up and really de-risk that loan on your behalf. The LEDA, I'll cover this really basically, but this is especially for businesses that were considering or are considering some type of infrastructure project. Let me scroll to the top. Land, building, infrastructure, et cetera. And it also can be used for lease abatement, mortgage assistance for your place of business. So it's similar, it's kind of similar to your federal level EIDL, but here at the local level, LEDA funding, Local Economic Development Act, as you know, has traditionally been used to support infrastructure projects, build outs of places by businesses. RS-21 leveraged LEDA funding to build out their downtown office, things like that. They kind of come in as a co-investor to your other money. The cool part here, we all love this 0%, which means it's basically just a grant if you make your payments. It's not a grant because it is a loan, and there's defaults and there's other things that you'd be on the hook for, and you do have to pay it back, but it's same as cash. Mark Roper is the guy at the state with the 411 on that. Interestingly, it's a requirement that businesses who apply must have 50% revenue generated out of state. So that's kind of the highlight. They want this to be to economic base producing companies, not just local companies. They want to help bolster companies that are really growing economic based jobs, which are defined as jobs that export product and services out of state, because that brings money in state. So I think that's smart, but it does leave a lot of businesses out who are just locally oriented. The one that the administration locally is talking about right now is actually pretty darn simple and pretty darn cool. $5,000 to ABQ startups fewer than 5 employees. So the city has really stepped up and said, all this stuff especially is really best positioned, although smaller companies can leverage it, still best positioned, and the instruments are still best positioned for companies that have some legs under them. For those that don't, we're going to put $5,000 in their pocket so they can pay business expenses, do what they need to do to survive the next few months, if that's warranted, right? So it's up to $5,000. You do have to, it is basically a grant. The city is positioning this as a service you're going to provide to the city by staying open, if that makes sense. It is of the city's interest to make that happen, so they're not just handing out money like that scene in Dumb and Dumber. Here you go, here you go, Dumb and Dumber fans. They are expecting you to say, give a report after you spend it after 6 months, and I think we're back. I just came in and out. After 6 months, you need to report on it. Requirements are here. They're also on the website. Got to be in the city limits. You have to have been in business at least 6 months. So this is actually interesting. For these other loans, these other things, you actually only have to be in business since January of this year. The city is saying we want this to go for businesses. Basically what they're saying is we don't want people to form a business just to get $5,000 from us, right? Which is smart. You got to have a business bank account. This cannot go into a personal bank account. You must provide a report within 6 months of receiving it, and you can't be a franchise or a business with restricted age requirements, i.e. a bar or anything that deals with vice stuff, essentially. So you can't be a local Subway or anything like that either, or even like Mary Kay, stuff like that. I don't know. Actually, I don't know if Mary Kay is a franchise. It's a direct distribution thing. No, I don't know if those are considered franchises. Not a problem for our startups who are doing disruptive and awesome stuff. So it's up to 5K. Not many gotchas, right? Because this is not a loan, which is awesome. You're just going to get the money, and you're going to have to say how you spent it, but you're not going to have to repay. I believe applications are open for this sucker right this minute, and they've already gotten over 100 applications, so it's first come, first serve, and you really got to get on it. Very simple. Just go to the website and click English o Español, and boom, dada, you fill out this sucker, and you get going. It's a pretty big form, but with your friendly neighborhood autocorrect feature in your browser, it'll get some stuff done, and you can fill out the rest. If a startup knows how to do one thing, it's filling out darn forms. So
yes,
that's the scene here. Somebody have a question? Unincorporated burn co businesses, Emily. Yeah, I don't believe so. For the micro business relief, because it's a City of Albuquerque initiative, that's one of the requirements. They cannot be giving money out past their literal geographic jurisdiction. That makes sense. So I live in Tijeras. If my office was up here, I'm out of commission for this micro business relief program, and I should look into. What I'll do after this call, look and see what Bernalillo County is putting together. Typically, counties don't have as much wherewithal for stuff like this as cities themselves. Counties typically deal with much more basic business, and they have some resources, but really I'm focused here on where's money, potentially. Okay, so that is the spreadsheet. I want to talk about the state of venture capital now because I'm a fund manager, and I understand that that's always also going to be a consideration right now. Many startups were actively raising money prior to late February, early March world change. B, some startups might be thinking, I really need cash, and I really think I have something here now more than ever, actually. And And so what is the state of the state? How should I think about angel investors and venture capitalists? And I don't have anything to present here, so I'll actually just stop sharing. There's that big button. Between all the different platforms, it gets pretty hairy to navigate the UIs. Two things. The reality is that most VCs have money in markets as well. So basically when the market drops 30%, 25%, that represents a one-to-one contraction of venture capital money. There are still money in family offices, angels who are diversified. Not all their money is in markets. They're ready for situations like this, but essentially, you can look back at the dot-com bubble of 99, 2000, as well as the real estate crash in 2008, and track a huge recession in VC investment at those times. And they're expecting that or even worse in this situation for the next few months. So I'm not being alarmist. I'm just saying what the nature of things is that if you're considering venture capital investment, in general, it is going to be harder to get it over the next 3-4 months, probably year, if not years. I think this is a situation it's going to take years to recover from. New Mexico in particular, we took basically until last year to recover from the 2008 recession, just to be in time for this one. So yay, good for us. That being said, Tara, I think about Little Lions Learn. I think about, and I'm going to talk strategy and philosophy a little bit here. Savvy investors are looking for deals during this time. They're looking at this. Obviously, we are all sad about the loss of life, the disruption in the world, how this creates, especially hardship for those less poised to handle it. As an investor, you're thinking that this is actually a time to buy into some very resilient companies who are well positioned for what the world is going to be like in the wake of COVID, after COVID, things like that. So not only are startups looking at their own business right now and saying, in light of COVID, not just near term, but mid and long term, should I continue doing what I'm doing or should I pivot? Should I really take this team I've developed or the software I've developed and shut it down because it's just not going to work in this new COVIDian world? Or am I actually well positioned? Do I just so happen to be very well positioned to succeed and grow like never before with COVID? So depending on what your business is, who your team is, and how flexible and pivotable you are, you might be in a really good situation to go to investors and say, now is the time to pour some fuel on the fire and support growth. Zach, who was on the call earlier, I don't see him here, but he's serving car dealerships. So this is an introspection you have to do. You really have to take a step back and say, in light of COVID, what is my business I'm in? Should I be in this business anymore or should I not? I heard a story just this morning on a call. There was an entrepreneur who had a company. I forget what the company did, but he got $5 million of funding in his bank account on September 10th, 2001. September 10th, 2001, he had $5 million in the bank account doing whatever he was doing. September 11th, 2001 happens. Everything is literally changed overnight, and he has to be in a completely different reality. So again, I'm not being alarmist. I'm just saying, as a business owner and as investors, we're all recognizing now, I think, that the game has changed and we have to pivot or understand that this is a time to double down on whatever we're doing. And like Kara, for your business, I think this is probably a double down moment for you. So, but even in a double down scenario, you got to understand that VCs are going to be making fewer deals. So If they had, like ABQID fund, we funded 5 new companies last year. We just won't be doing that this year. It's just not going to be possible because the investors that we're going to go after are fewer to put money into our fund. So there just will be a contraction, which is honestly why I shared a lot about the spreadsheet, because the stimulus package is a great blessing in that sense. One other thing I'll mention, and it's the sister program of Activate New Mexico, is Hyperspace Challenge. And that's a program that helps tech startups get federal and government contracts. What I'm seeing in my portfolio of companies is those who are consumer facing or otherwise playing in commercial markets. Some of them doing well. AdWallet actually has a lot of advertisers who want to advertise things in light of COVID. Some have dropped off, but some are still going. And the consumer population is searching gangbusters for ways to make money at home, right? So they're actually getting a lot more organic traffic. So AdWallet's doing pretty well. Others not so well because they're Electric Playhouse. They had a flagship store. They had ticket sales is their number one thing. So they're one of those businesses that went from 100 to 0 almost overnight. More like 100 to 25 because they have some kind of creative tech contracts that they're able to float with. For them, these loans and this type of money is going to be the thing that helps them weather the storm, and their business will be back. It's not like the human race doesn't want to play anymore. We just can't play when there's a pandemic, as it turns out. So that's the state of the state. I think I lost my train of thought there at the very end. Yeah, it looks like the city will do another webinar later today or tomorrow and make it a webinar, not a meeting, so that the 100-person limit isn't hit. I think it'd be still helpful to go after that, but go for that non-dilutive capital. Are there any federal contracts out there? That's what I was going to end my thought on. The companies in our portfolio who have federal contracts or in industries like aerospace with federal kind of contracts or regulatory support are not hard hit. So in some ways, New Mexico is well positioned, except for that oil and gas thing. That's going to be what causes New Mexico to contract substantially just as a state. So make no mistake, I think we are at the very forefront of something very systemically challenging for our state and in turn for each of our businesses. There's no normal here after 3 to 4 months from now, if only because we're looking at a $2 billion hit in terms of revenues to the state from the drop, the plunge in oil and gas, let alone kind of small business closings, things like that. And I believe it's 1/3 of our revenue as a state comes from oil and gas. So all the things that we talked about doing as a state with our influx of capital, thanks to the boom of oil and gas the past few years, never has there been a starker turnaround, never, like in history, has there been a starker turnaround in our fortunes, given that 1/3 of our revenue is coming from the Permian Basin down there, southeastern New Mexico. So Becky, good question. The city had 100 entries already. There are 500,000 available. Do you think they will add to it, or is it probably already all taken? From my knowledge, I think they were able to scramble and find and reallocate this pot of capital for this program. I think they're going to be hard pressed to find another 500,000 somewhere out there. I could see another entity maybe stepping up to support, but this is what I know is real. So make your case as a small business strong, and go from there. You know, basically, if I'm the city, I want businesses that are going to be creating jobs and good paying jobs, things like that. So paint the picture of yourself in that way. Show how you're going to be creating high paying jobs by not only surviving but thriving through this crisis. I also don't covet them because they're going to probably have 500 or more submissions and only be able to write 100 $5,000 checks. The other thing, and that I don't have any inside scoop on this, but if you ask for less than 5,000, that's probably a boon as well. You know, it's a little bit of that. It's a wonderful life moment where they just got married and they're going to go on honeymoon with $8,000, but they're like, we're going to keep this bank open with $8,000. How much do you need? So ask for what you need and nothing more. And I think that increases your chances probably too. One other thing I'll say, more on a positive side, is that as younger businesses, you can pivot easier. You can make certain decisions easier. Consider the fact, like Kara, let's say you have 20 staff. Let's say you have a CTO, COO, and you have 8 people on payroll, and then COVID hits. It's awesome that you've gotten that far, but it's also you're going to experience this problem much more deeply. A few of our portfolio companies have literally had to lay off 45% of staff within a week. Some tears, some hardship there. In a way, the earlier stage you are right now, the better position you are, not only to weather the storm, but to make bold moves like, we're in this business now, we need to actually get into this business in light of where the change that COVID is going to be making. So consider yourselves lucky in a sense, kind of, sort of, but see the opportunity in these moments. You know, that's where we really have to set our sights, not lament what was or what has changed, but really say, all right, based on who I am, based on what my business is, where can I really add value for this new reality we're going to find ourselves in? Sarah, hi Sarah, nice to meet you. Yeah, very physical, close contact. So Sarah, you're not dissimilar to like Electric Playhouse, which I know quite a bit about. They are a tech startup because they have the software they're powering their projection mapping games with, but they're a place and they're a physical place. And so it's all about contracting back to the core staff. One analogy I heard this morning on a call with the Global Accelerator Network is, this is kind of for many businesses, this is a parking lot exercise moment, in the sense that you got to take all of your staff, all of your business, and put it out in the parking lot. Rather than say, who can I save? Everything goes out into the parking lot. And then you ask the question, who do I bring back first? What staff members, what employees do I bring back first? If you can make deep cuts from a cost perspective, if you can make all your costs variable, in a sense, look at all your fixed costs now, go line by line. If you're the money person in your business, or if you have a money person in your business, you sit down with that person and say, here's this cost, and this cost. How can I make this variable? How can I decrease it? If it's rent, maybe it's deferral. You know, maybe it's one of these loans. If it's people, usually it's people, right? You say, who are my absolute A players I'm going to fight for, absolutely, to keep them through this time, and I'll expend resources to do that, versus who might I miss but is not critical. And these are hard decisions to make about people's livelihood. And if you're a personable person like me, you don't like having to put somebody on the street, so to speak, but sometimes you're going to have to do that if you believe in what you're doing in your business. So it's that parking lot exercise. Other advice I'd have for you is, yeah, think creatively. Electric Playhouse can't have people in their place right now, but maybe they could. They're kind of partnered with New Mexico United, and United's not doing anything. So maybe they could have a little ice hockey or air hockey tournament where they live stream it from their location with fewer than 5 people, and people can pay to watch the game. I don't know. Maybe you can do one-to-one consultations and shift some of your most prized customer base to more of a concierge model. There's, Dan said, wife's dance classes are keeping engagement via Twitch. So So everybody is asking this, how do I go virtual with this kind of question, which I think is a good question. I also think the answer for some businesses, you can't. What do I pivot to, at least during this time, to keep some revenue coming in and come back to this fundamentally physical business when I can. So that's another kind of way to handle it. But Dan, I'm going to turn it back to you. Yeah, private lessons, Facebook, like Patreon. Yeah, it's not enough. I think there's going to be there's a lot of pivot opportunity and a lot of step back and say, okay, this particular business might not be viable, at least right now. I'm an entrepreneur. What business is viable right now? And that's the kind of like the changed reality we're in. Many businesses our inherent nature as entrepreneurs is to say, I don't quit. I'm not gonna let this thing die and kind of fall on our swords or go down with the ship. Meanwhile, there's this other ship there, or there's a new sword. You could grab that and fight another battle, start another business or do something else. This might be a moment to at least reflect on that and say, I've got some skills, I've got a good network, but this business I've currently tried to make work, and it's been hard before COVID, just got 90% harder. So what business can I be in that is a trending business, not a diminishing one? And again, it's not necessarily saying goodbye to it forever, but my sense is this is not a weeks-long thing, and we already know that. This is going to be months-long. I did talk to an accelerator director in China who said that in Shanghai, and people are getting back out, and China is very authoritarian the way it controls the population, so they can do this even more effectively in that way than we can. But even with lockdown lifted, people's behavior, people are still fearful. They're not going out as much, even though they're not restricted from doing so. I think we're going to see some of the same stuff. You've got moms who are still concerned about kids getting something and stuff like that, even if it might not be rational at that point, which I think it probably will be, since we know that probably comes back in the fall when it gets cold again at some point, based on the science I'm reading. But on the bright side, it looks like we've got some really cool answers and antidotes coming up. We're going to get through this, right? But this is a month long. Probably the entire of 2020 is chalked up to being the year of the COVID at this point, to a certain extent. So I have counseled some of our portfolio companies who are talking about June and July like it's kind of back to normal, and I've cautioned them from being too optimistic and not realistic enough, and seeing that you really need, maybe we do, that would be awesome if we're kind of all back to normal, and Electric Playhouse and you go gangbusters because people are all pent up from being inside, and we buy all the tickets to all the things. But the reality is that it's not going to come back the way it was before, I think, is the nature of it. Plus, on the bright side, again, opportunistically, Kara, I think about Little Lions Learn, people are like, oh, wait, online stuff is pretty cool. You got this huge market bump in digital things. And I think on businesses are going to have to confront the fact that 80% of their workforce just work from home, and like 25% really like it. They'd like to keep working from home. I can vouch for that. I'm quite enjoying myself as mostly an introvert. So the world is changing. This is not just a big sickness. This is behavior changing moment in terms of the markets and what we're going to do once the actual virus is gone. The behavior will have changed. So these are the things I'm thinking about.
TJ, thank you so much for this sporadic impromptu meeting. Specifically, we started it up as a supporting call for the folks in the Activate New Mexico program who could not get into the City of Albuquerque's small business webinar. Cynthia did call and said that she will be putting on another one of those this afternoon and probably tomorrow, so I'll try to find out information about that. I did invite just some random people online because I know a lot of people wanted to get into that webinar. And so thank you so much for doing this impromptu. If you'd like to stay in the loop on that resource doc or a recording of this session, please just go ahead and sign up on the Eventbrite. We're looking to do an Ask Me Anything with TJ in about a week and a half. Originally, we were having an idea of doing it today, but we wanted to partner with the city to support them in their initiatives since they have this wonderful program. So yeah, again, ours is leaning a little bit more to the tech and the startup kind of ecosystem in New Mexico. But again, to TJ's point, I think it's really a good time right now to do a lot of reflection about what does the future of our businesses look like. So we got to get our futurist caps on a little bit. So again, thank you so much, TJ.
Can I answer Alonzo's really awesome question here as well?
Sure.
Alonzo, I totally see where you're coming from, and I know as a guy with a big heart, I think you know some answers to this, but I think entrepreneurs, you can be of two minds in a sense. Personally, your heart is going out. We're mourning with those who are mourning during a time like this, especially if you have some fear within the family about older folks like I do. My in-laws live with me, so I'm very, very sensitive to what this could do, right? At the same time, as an entrepreneur, that profile is, look, there's some opportunity here. This is a buyer's market, right? Buy low and sell high, blah, blah, blah. There are real opportunities here. And I know the business you're in, it is going gangbusters. I think the way those two merge is through your personal purpose and what you're going to be able to do with that capital that comes from your business success, and how you're going to be able to make angel investments, do things you maybe didn't have before. It's the larger picture, knowing that some of us are on the right side of things that happen. What if it wasn't COVID? What if it was something that totally killed your business, right, Alonzo? And just having that kind of humble heart around the fact that it's not necessarily designing the circumstances we're in, but how we handle the circumstances that are aligned or not aligned to our kind of sense of purpose, what we're trying to want to achieve in the world. So, keep on doing that remote accountability, and then do great things with the capital that comes out of that. Invest in one of these companies here. But that's an awesome question. And I would also say, like for me, I've been actually running more than I usually have the past couple weeks. I know it's going gangbusters. You probably feel like you don't have a free 30 minutes or an hour, but I promise you that doing those things that get you out of the context of work with your family, with exercise, sleeping, they'll make you a more sustained individual, so you can do this for the next few months rather than burn out in a matter of weeks. And also, when you are spending those hours, there'll be better hours spent. So keep your eye on the ball in terms of staying well-rounded even through times like this, would be my other advice. All right, that's all I wanted to say. Alonzo, push my button.
All right, everyone. Thank you so much. I'll go ahead and upload this recording. If you'd like to stay in the loop, please go ahead and RSVP via the Eventbrite for those that are in the Activate program. That will be in our platform. And we'll follow up soon with some information about the city's webinar when they're going to do that again, as well as a recording of this session and information about our Stay Engaged series. Okay? Thank you so much, everyone. Have a great afternoon. Be safe.
Yep.